And we're back. It's been a while. I just checked and it's been 27 days since I've recorded and uploaded. And I'd be lying if I said I was sorry. I needed to take a break. I was kind of just I wasn't feeling the creative flair to upload videos. So I thought I'll take a few weeks off, I'll reset. And yeah, I think I've got a few good ones lined up for you. I might even do 2 a week. I'll see how I go. Anyways, let's get into the video. You read the title? I see a lot of people on the internet, and I feel like the general consensus is that young people, teenagers and young adults, have got a tendency to be feeling behind, especially, when comparing themselves online. And, everyone's heard the saying, comparison is the thief of joy. But it's more about that's just a small sample size. And compared to everyone else, even being aware that you need to be doing these things and the feeling of being behind is already putting you ahead of so many people. Because there's so many people who are just completely oblivious, who are still, just being losers, and they haven't even thought about, their future, their goals, their purpose, all these kind of things. It's rare to find people who actually care about this stuff and who are, always feeling behind. Because there's actually not, we hyper focus ourselves onto, especially on the internet, into things that, concern us, that we're into, whatever. And all these social media apps are incredibly good at giving us content that is targeted towards us. And so if you're a young person who has got ambition, who is working and doing everything they can to be the best version of themselves, of course, the content you're going to see is that those people doing the same thing. Except the people who you see online, most of the time are, the 1% of the 1%. They're, even if they're your age, they're just anomalies. And to be comparing yourself against that is basically putting yourself up against, you could call it gifted, you could call it the hardest working, that top echelon of people. That's what the internet is. Most of the internet is just the top echelon of people in their field. And chances are you're not in that top echelon. And your actual competition doesn't even give a shit about, going to the gym frequently, improving their health, eating clean, improving their mental health. They don't even think to care about it. And so by actually caring about it and doing your best and making an attempt and being consistent at trying to improve these factors, you're already leaps and bounds ahead. And the reason why it doesn't feel like that, and it feels like everyone's just on a level playing field and you're just behind, there's so many people ahead of you, is because when you're young, especially in your teens and early 20s, you don't really start to see those effects yet. Think about compound interest. Those first 5-10 years of the compound is quite slow, but then it ramps up exponentially. You've seen the curve. And that's essentially how it is for these habits and this hard work that you're putting in now. While you are putting in the same effort and you're stacking this, you might be only a little bit ahead, or you might even be behind for people who got, those genetic people who are got lucky with their situation, their environment, whatever. And, they may just start ahead. But say, for example, they're putting $50 into their investment and you're putting $500. Now, but if they're starting at, $10,000 and you're starting at $200, it's going to take way more time for you to catch up and get ahead. But when you do, it's just going to be so much more because they're not adding as much as you are. So it's kind of this weird period where you're working hard and you're doing as many right things as you can and you're always trying to improve, but you haven't really seen true results. Like, you might be growing in the gym, but so is everyone. Everyone's training, but there's a lot of people who aren't also, not drinking, not partying, all that stuff. So yeah, while you're in the gym, you may not be ahead of everyone, but on an overall level, you're building so many more important things than what they are. If anything, they're taking away by doing these poor habits. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, the early stages, even the first 5 years of truly taking yourself and your life and everything seriously has little to no return. If you just compare yourself to yourself, there's massive return. But comparing yourself to other people, there isn't so much return. People go out and get normal, regular jobs. They go work a trade, or they go to uni, and you don't really notice the differences. Everyone just seems kind of normal. It still feels like school where you're all the same age, you're all kind of progressing at similar speeds. But once you hit, mid-20s, late 20s, that's when that compound effect really starts to kick in, and you start to see the differences between the people who have spent those early years working on themselves and improving as many aspects of their life as they can, versus the people who weren't conscious of that. And, maybe they did care, but they just weren't aware of it. Then you got the people who don't care, who could not give less of a shit. They just want to go and, live their life and do whatever. And then you start to see those compounding effect. And that's when it starts to feel really good. And you'll be glad that you'll be thanking your younger self that you started on this path and stuck to it. Because now you're seen as that lucky gifted one. And you're seen as, all people will make these excuses, but that you've done the hard work, and you've put in those years where it felt like progress wasn't really being made, and all of a sudden, bang, it kind of feels like it explodes out of nowhere. Just in a couple of years, it goes from being, a little bit ahead of the competition or at the competition level to bang, you're so far ahead of everyone. You're stronger, you're smarter, your mental health is on point. The printer again. Sorry, stupid printer. But what was I saying? All these things that you've been building, and all of a sudden you stand on a completely different level to the people that you were once comparing yourselves to, and you were once on a semi-even playing field with. So if you do feel like you're behind, as long as you are doing the right things, and you know what they are, you will eventually see those results. You will eventually see the gap. You'll start to get ahead, and you'll start to get traction, and you'll start to just get exponentially further and further ahead. It may not feel like it now, but it's coming. And once it does hit, and once you start to see how much progress you've actually made compared to everyone else, you'll be so glad you did. If you're still here at the end of the video, thanks for sticking out this break. I didn't really let you know. I kind of decided to have a break. But anyways, still here at the end of the video, I love you, and remember, life is what you make it.